Hi everyone, good morning.
Good morning.
And a slightly cold morning, isn't it? I'm so glad to be inside and not outside right now. Thank you so much for joining today, and thanks for your time and attention. My name is Abhinav Chetan, and after that long introduction, I'll probably just briefly tell you about what I do. And over the next 45 minutes, I hope to be able to share with you what generative AI can really do for social impact. And also, this is not a masterclass. You know, the word masterclass puts me on a pedestal. I'm not a master, this is not a class. We want this to be a conversation between you and me. We'll share with you, and I have some members from my team as well who are sitting here, how we've managed to use generative AI to create impact at scale. All right? Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Sounds like you're in the right room? All right, okay. So I have spent about 12 years at Google, worked with large brands in the US, UK, and India. And then in 2020, I quit because I had a strong desire to work with nonprofit startups and to teach. And those desires are now manifesting as different brands. One of our brands is called Digital For Nonprofits, and I've been extremely lucky that we've gotten the chance to work with nonprofits, use technology, and create impact. So this is what we have in store for you today. Over the next 45 minutes to an hour, because I also want you to ask questions, and I also want this to be a dialogue. So please, if you have any questions, stop me. I'm very happy to take questions between the session, even after. And you can find us outside. We have a small space called Digital For Nonprofits. So we'll talk about these 4 things. And I'm a great believer in giving value. When I say value, what I mean is I want you to be able to leave having learned something. And I'm getting gestures from the team saying that you cannot hear me at the back. Everybody hear me at the back? Yeah, good. All's okay, don't worry. Maybe you can't hear me, they can. So we'll talk about India and how we are now a digital powerhouse. We'll then also talk about nonprofits and sustainable development goals, how the two are related. And then we'll put them together. And one of our core beliefs is that if we can digitize nonprofits, we can achieve sustainable development goals faster. Everyone with me on that? Yeah? Nonprofits happen to be at the forefront, working with the grassroots, working towards the betterment of our country. And if we can help them digitize, then we'll definitely achieve these goals faster than we were doing before. We also would like to show you some case studies. As I mentioned, I'm a great believer in giving you value and impact. So we're not just talking, we'll show you how we've done this with a variety of nonprofits. And you can do the same. And it doesn't have to be a nonprofit only. The idea is anyone who works with a brand, anyone who works with social impact can use the same principles we used. And finally, we'll show you some applications as well, how we were able to do this and how you can do this too. Now, as I mentioned, this is what you will get. But what if I also told you that by the end of this session, you will be able to summarize information from any PDF and any video in a few seconds? Anyone seen this happen? Anyone use generative AI to summarize lots of information quickly? Yeah, some hands? Yeah, but whenever I ask this question in different rooms, it's still less than 5%. I hope for the day when 100% hands go up and say we've used this feature. Also, how about creating content at scale? Gone are the days when you had to write it out all by yourself. Everybody tried this, yes? ChatGPT, Bard, you being able to create some content. You're not very sure of what this is, but we can tell you how to refine that and get really good quality outputs which sound like your brand or like you. How about this one? Even do advanced data analysis and create images. Yes? Images, of course, because of that deep fake problem statement everybody would have heard about. But what about data analysis? Any sorts of data file can now be analyzed very, very quickly using generative AI. So we will talk about these applications as well over the session. All right, but let's begin with the India story. Now, we know that India's GDP per capita is going up. We also know that the internet penetration is going up. And a lot of this is in fact happening because of the smartphone adoption revolution. Not just that, the cost per data has plummeted. In fact, in India, the cost per GB of data is probably the cheapest anywhere in the world. And I've experienced this when you go to different parts of the world. We have better data infrastructure than many advanced economies now. And this is first-hand experience. These two things are creating this revolution. Although we still have a long way to go, a significant percentage of our population is still unconnected. And that's why the world is now looking at us as an emerging economy. The pillar for that, of course, is digitization. And this is why I personally believe, and I am here in India working with nonprofits, working with digital, to ensure that this potential does not go waste. Let's look at some other numbers. Everybody uses search. Yeah. Did you also know that the second largest search engine is in fact a video search engine? What is the second largest search engine in the world? YouTube? Can you give me names of any other search engines? So we've spoken about search, we've spoken about YouTube. Any others? Google? Okay, so Google search is one search engine. YouTube is another. Bing? Yeah. Yahoo's another one. DuckDuckGo, interesting, I was waiting for that. You clearly privacy conscious. There are so many search engines in the world. It's just that in India we haven't experienced many. Why? Because Google search is 95% of the market. But if you go out, if you go to Russia, you'll see Yandex. If you go to China, you'll see something else. You go to South Korea, you'll see Naver. These are gateways to information. And when you see queries growing on search engines, you realize that more and more people are now seeking information online. Why is this happening? Because the moment they get access, they want answers, they want information. Entertainment and communication actually comes next. So you have search, you have WhatsApp, and you have YouTube, which become the primary ports of first-time use for a lot of users, and Facebook as well. Something significant happened in 2022, and while I was at Google, we used to look at this number very closely. Digital overtook television to become the largest advertising medium. Why is this important? It is important because ad expenditure in India, we are, by the way, the fastest growing ad market anywhere in the world. You should know that. We are also the fastest growing digital ad market anywhere in the world. And the reason for that is a lot of these people coming online and a lot of advertisers and brands following them by adopting advertising. Which is why even social impact, a lot of you folks who work with the development sector need to wake up to the fact that digital is no longer an option. It is in fact a necessity. Do you agree with me? Yeah. Now if you have to build a brand, you cannot not have digital. And I've worked with enough large brands while I was at Google, and even now we have another brand which advises early stage startups and MSMEs. Earlier, if you had to build a 100 crore brand, you'd probably have to spend about 50 to 100 crore. This is pre-digital, because you'd have to go to print, you'd have to go to TV, you'd have to go offline. Lately, you can build 100 crore brands in a fraction of that price. Why? Because you can do very, very targeted advertising, which reaches your consumer and they become your customers. Which is why the entire startup ecosystem is now so passionate about putting in money and advertising and growing their customer bases. A lot of that is built on digital advertising alone, and that is exactly what we want to do for nonprofits for social impact. Let's keep moving. So you heard the digital story. Now let's put the two together with SDGs and nonprofits. Everybody familiar with Sustainable Development Goals? Yeah. Adopted by the UN in 2015, they're a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and to ensure that by 2030, all people enjoy peace and prosperity. These, of course, are large meta goals, and these are then further subdivided into individual sections and then driven forward by not just governments, but also private and public partnerships, but also by nonprofits. Anyone represents a nonprofit in this room? Yeah. You folks are driving sustainable development goals. Yeah. And how can we help you achieve those sustainable development goals is by helping you or enabling you to digitize. Why do we need sustainable development goals? Because despite us having the privilege of being in these rooms, despite us having the privilege of being able to talk about this, many people still live in extreme poverty. Many people lack access to basic sanitation, and many people even lack basic literacy skills. And given what's happening now with AI, because we do a lot of work with AI, we see that this inequality might grow further. Therefore, addressing this, to me, should be the call of the hour. And we can, of course, all help change that. a lot of you sitting here in the room. Coming to how India can contribute towards sustainable development goals. We still have a significant percentage of our population below the poverty line. A lot of people are still dependent on free food, and a lot of people are still illiterate. And among the fastest ways for us to contribute towards fixing this is by scaling nonprofit impact. And one of the ways in which this can be done is digitization. And why I'm standing here and speaking about this is because we've been able to contribute in a small way to certain nonprofits by using generative AI and digital technology to do just that. So this for us is the growth equation. Digital into nonprofits will accelerate sustainable development goals. Now let's see this in action. As Digital for Nonprofits, we are a young brand. We've existed for only about 2.5 years. And we have a few nonprofit partners we've been working with who relate to these 8 specific sustainable development goals. 3 of those nonprofit partners are folks you will see today on the slides, and you may even be familiar with them. Seva Bharat, anyone heard of Seva Bharat? Yes. There's My Angels Academy, and there is Aarti for Girls. So these are 3 organizations we'll show you case studies for today. But before we go there, let's take a quick look at the nonprofit sector. And we've worked with the nonprofit sector for a while. We've done a lot of research for nonprofits and with nonprofits. So I'll share some of our work with you here. Now, India has the highest number of nonprofits anywhere in the world. We have 3 million registered or unregistered nonprofits. But only 10% of them have ever reported any financial result. So a lot of them are clearly either defunct or were created for other means. And only a fraction of them have an FCRA. Everyone familiar with an FCRA? Yeah, if you're a nonprofit, you definitely know what an FCRA is. Not easy to get one nowadays. But the fact is that all these organizations who have an FCRA certificate are eligible for technology grants. And what technology grants means is that a lot of companies like Google, Microsoft, LinkedIn will give you tech for free. It's just that many nonprofits are not aware of it. And then once you get tech, what you do with it is also another step. But on the right-hand side, what you see is a rapidly growing ecosystem which is happy to fund you. Now, there are many folks in today's conversation who are in fact funders for social enterprises. And this funding comes from 3 separate sources. You have people like you and me giving, and then you have the CSR law in the country, and then you have a lot of money coming from outside. And as India grows, look at where the Sensex is today, 72,000 plus, the CSR corpus will grow. And as more people become millionaires and billionaires, individual philanthropy will also grow. And as per capita income grows, a lot of you, a lot of us will end up giving some part of our income. So this fund is growing. But on the left-hand side, we have this ecosystem which is not sufficiently digitized to be able to speak to the funding ecosystem. And that's a big problem. This is where we expect all the brands we interact with to be. Anyone uses Zomato here? Show of hands. Yeah? Anyone uses Amazon, Uber? Yeah? The digital experience, and I've worked with all these brands in India, the digital experience there spoils you. Does it not? Because now if you don't get a cab at the time which you expected to, you get agitated. If your Zomato order shows it's 19 minutes and comes in 29, you're agitated. We as consumers are being spoiled, but then the same expectation is also built with nonprofits. Why? Because why are they not digitized? If I'm willing to give you money, if I'm willing to support you, then why is your website not loading? Why do you not have payment infrastructure? Why do you still write me emails and ask me for checks? Everyone experience this? Yeah. And that's a big problem. In fact, in our experience, most nonprofits pretty much sit between stage 1 and 2 of digitization, if we look at digitization as a 4-point scale. And that's what we want to fix. And we will show you how we've done some amount of work to fix that, as well as give you a glimpse of generative AI. Now, we did a deep study with the top 70 nonprofits in the country, and the results were not surprising. Well, they were ironic, yes, but they were not surprising. Only 4% of the top 70 nonprofits in the country have a translation tool on their website. And do you know how many people in India speak English? 150 million. How many of us speak Hindi? 400 million. And there are so many other languages in which, in case nonprofits just enabled communication, they would get more reach. And one of the ways in which Seva Bharat has done that, in fact, most of the nonprofits you will see on our slides have a translation tool on their website. It's the simplest fix possible. And the heartening thing for us to see with those nonprofits is that now, using sophisticated tracking software, we can see a lot of their beneficiaries come to the website, change the language from English to their language, and consume content. And these are the folks who are spending more time consuming content on the nonprofit websites than some of us. Very few of them, well, not very few, but a significant percentage do not have any tracking capability on their websites. So that's one thing we're offering at the stall we have. In case you're a nonprofit and you'd like a free analytics audit, please leave your details with us and we'll get back to you in some time with an in-depth audit of how you can improve your tracking for your nonprofit.
Excuse me, what are you saying about the 63% non-web tracking?
So a lot of nonprofits do not use even basic things like Google Analytics or heat map insights, looking at how exactly are people, when they come to their websites, interact with you. And this is what I learned as a very foundational step when I was working at Google, that if you can't track it, then you can't do anything about it. If you can't measure it, you can't impact it. Most of these websites do not load quickly on mobile. And the standard stat is that if a site does not load in under 3 seconds, 50% people will abandon it. And many of those people are us. And finally, very few of these organizations are using any form of paid media for outreach. And I've worked with a number of nonprofits in the US as well. There's a significant ecosystem which in fact promotes itself using money to be able to grow fundraising and awareness. Now, let's keep moving. This is part of our study which we produced, study which we intend to start publishing annually. If you're interested, please come and speak to us at our stall. And it's called the State of Digital for Nonprofits report. And we've done this with about 8,200 nonprofits across a variety of verticals. And what we found was that most nonprofits, from a digital maturity perspective, are still lacking, as you can see on the slides here. But child welfare is slightly ahead of environment, which is slightly ahead of sports, which is slightly ahead of food. And some of these examples you'll see on our case studies. Now, how can nonprofits bridge the gap? That's a big question. Welcome, Generative AI. By the way, we are a small team, and I'm proud to say that we're a small team, but we have big ambitions, and we've been able to create some meaningful impact. A lot of our work is generative AI related and AI driven, and we'll show you how that functions. But everybody now would have definitely heard about generative AI, unless you've been hibernating. Everyone used one generative AI tool? Give me a show of hands. Okay. More than one, keep your hands up. Let's see how many people have used more than one. More than 3? More than 5? Okay. How many generative AI tools now exist? They're in the hundreds. People have lost track. But the big ones, of course, everyone knows. There's ChatGPT, there's Bard, there's Claude, there's Midjourney.
What's next?
What's next? See, many more coming. Now there's, of course, a war between all of big tech because they want to catch up with OpenAI. What can generative AI really do? It's a fascinating technology. It's only been a year. So right now what you see is actually the very worst of it. It will only get better. And every time I have this conversation with an audience, we have to update our presentation. So that should tell you how quickly this is changing. And we do these sessions almost monthly, if not more. With generative AI, you can create text, images, audio. Soon, you will also be able to create video. Some of you may have seen the recent deepfake examples where folks were impersonating other folks. In this case, of course, they were using generative AI for not the right purposes. But when put to use for nonprofits and for impact for good, this technology can do wonders. What can it do? Many things, but let's talk about a few specific ones. It can generate content and ideas. It can improve efficiency for you. It can also personalize experiences. And in our case, for nonprofits, we've been able to do most of this. In one case, for content automation, you don't need to write things yourself anymore. But that doesn't mean that you transfer and outsource everything to generative AI. It has to be a hybrid. AI and I have to work together. In this case, you can automate content to a degree where generative AI is speaking your brand's voice. It can also speak your voice. And about 80 to 90% of the content you create can be automated. Of course, you still need to fact check, you still need to edit before it goes out for public consumption. And the outcomes, of course, you save a lot of time, and you can now create your own GPT. Well, that's a new feature which is recently launched within the ChatGPT Plus account, where you can train GPT on your brand, on your language, so that it becomes almost like a personal Jarvis, a personal smart assistant. Couple that with technology grants, and this is what you'll see in the case studies, where you create a lot of content, you're able to communicate better as a brand, and you augment that with technology grants. Things like Google for Nonprofits. A Google ad grant can really improve mission awareness and fundraising for you. Or you use Microsoft for Nonprofits, or Canva, or Grammarly. There are a lot of technology tools which are now available, which you can aggregate as social entrepreneurs and use generative AI along with that to improve mission awareness and fundraising. And in our experience, well, there are many needs for nonprofits, but these happen to be the top 5, where you have fundraising, outreach, digital assets, software subscriptions, and talent as the big ones. And right in the middle sits digitization. And when you put generative AI at the core of this, the journey to impact becomes a lot shorter. So now let's look at some case studies. Enough of the theory. I want you to see some of this in action. So we'll talk about 3 case studies. One is Seva Bharat. And I was incidentally in Ahmedabad, and I was lucky enough to see where Seva started and meet a lot of the team there last week. And it's a wonderful organization working with grassroots women workers, and they're a network of about 3 million women, not just in India, but even outside. Then there is Aarti for Girls, a special organization which started about 30 years ago. And it started from Sandhya ma'am adopting an abandoned infant, a girl who was left on the side of the street, and taking her into her own arms. And over the last 30 years, she's now built this into a shelter for over 6,000 women. And I've had the privilege of speaking to them, meeting them, working with them, and we are very lucky to be able to support them. The third is My Angels Academy. Again, another very honest grassroots institution, a man who's been working for 30 years to use love and football to transform lives of slum kids in Vikaspuri here in Delhi. And these are the 3 organizations you'll see in action and how they've used generative AI to improve their agenda. Let's talk about Seva Bharat. Now, over the last 2.5 years, using generative AI, and I'll share some quick examples with you as well, and tech grants, they've been able to increase their footprint by 3 times. So what their daily traffic used to be, it's thrice of that now. A lot more time spent on their website. People are now consuming content about Seva Bharat, not just from India, but outside. In fact, they recently got a very nice citation from the ex-CMO of Facebook, who happened to congratulate them on how they were using WhatsApp to be able to enable communication at the grassroots. More than 50% of the traffic comes from ad grants. Their LinkedIn presence has in fact grown 10x. So if you go to Seva Bharat's LinkedIn profile today, there are over 25,000 followers. Their newsletter is now about 12,000, 13,000 subscribers, started only a year ago. A lot of this is enabled by generative AI. Of course, it still requires people who are fact-checking, who are editing, who are ensuring that the output is on brand. But the core engine here is in fact digital. The core engine here is generative AI. Another interesting example I'd like to share with you is a lot of nonprofits have physical outreach centers. In this case, they're called Seva Shakti Kendras, where a lot of people can come and get basic understanding of their rights, how to get an Aadhaar card, how to get a ration card, what are the basic policies they need to be aware of. And a lot of these are small centers distributed across many, many states. So a lot of this was enabled through Google My Business. A lot of us use map listings all the time, but nonprofits somehow are not very aware of how to use this feature well. In the case of Seva Bharat, they've activated 25 such touch points across the country. And the last we checked, 12,000 people had actually used the directions button to find those Seva centers. which means that out of those 12,000, a significant percentage would have gotten answers which they would not have gotten otherwise, all enabled by digital. Now, as a consequence of this, one of the things we do is do a lot of research with nonprofits. Seva Bharat is now the benchmark among women empowerment organizations on digitization. Why? Because if you go to their site today, you'll find it is multilingual. You'll find a chatbot. You'll find that you can sign up for their newsletter. What you will not see, and of course we see, is that there's a lot of sophisticated tracking enabled by which we understand what exactly are these consumers looking at. In addition to this, more recently, we've started doing a lot of capability building sessions with their entire team on generative AI. And one of the most pleasant compliments I got from the leaders at Seva Bharat was that, Abhinav, even our admin staff and our finance staff seems to have adopted it, and their emails are without errors. Their emails look a lot more sophisticated, and I can see the entire organization is now slowly becoming generative AI friendly. Let's talk about Aarti for Girls.
So before going over there, yes, can you touch point where were they before and then how?
Absolutely. Yes. So over the last 2 years, because we worked with them for about 2.5 years, they were at, if I would look at this score, they were at about 4 to 5. So they've moved a stage up in the last 2 years on a digitization benchmark. And I can definitely share more results with you after the session. Aarti for Girls. And this was a wonderful story. Anyone heard of Lily Singh, the YouTube phenomena? Yeah. So Aarti for Girls is, as I mentioned, an organization which is doing wonderful work for young women. And they're present both in India as well as they have a small footprint in the US. And we were lucky enough to get them grants both in India and US. So now traffic on their India as well as US websites, a significant percentage is driven by grants. A lot of time spent on their website has improved. But the heartwarming story for us was when Lily Singh discovered Aarti for Girls on the US website and wanted to visit them for her birthday, but could not because of the Canada-India issue and she could not get a visa. So she instead made them a part of her birthday fundraiser. And guess what? They raised about $200,000. And out of that, $40,000 came straight to Aarti for Girls. All enabled just because they were present at the right time, at the right place. Of course, it was underpinned by the 30 years of work which they'd done before. But imagine finding a YouTube influencer who does a fundraiser for you without you asking. Anyone done fundraisers here? Yes? If as a non-profit you realize how much effort it takes. It takes up a lot of your time, it takes up a lot of your energy, and imagine this happening via digital. Now, let me move to the third story. And before I do that, I'd also like to share with you the benchmark for Aarti for Girls has also significantly improved. In this case, they've also moved up a great degree, from a particular stage they were at to now. And the interesting thing is we were talking to their team, and it was such a pleasant surprise for me to see that in their 3-year vision document, digital is now a pillar. So I know for a fact that if we were able to convince a nonprofit to make digital a part of their strategy, we were able to drive some bit of our agenda. The last one, but not the least one, is My Angels Academy. Wonderful organization. I know this man personally, Sylvester Peter. He's been felicitated by the president. He's come on KBC, but he's still struggling. Why? Because he's a small organization and too honest for his own good. In this case, again, they have been able to create a digital footprint, and they're growing slowly. A lot of their traffic is in fact primarily driven by grants, and they have now started using generative AI slowly to be able to create content for their social media platforms. And of course, the outcome of this is a lot of the kids there want to be able to find work via the nonprofit. So they've started cooking, and they've also started teaching. So they teach football, and a lot of the kids there are cooking. So this is now developed as the My Angels Academy Drive, where we've now enabled a page on their website so people can avail their services directly. So you can ask for them to cook for you for a 50 to 100 member gathering, and you can ask them to come and teach you football. And a lot of them are players, in fact, with the national team as well. So this is how digitization has been working in different ways with different nonprofits to create impact. And a lot of this, by the way, is powered by generative AI. In this case, I've in fact also spoken to a lot of nonprofits in the sports domain. I'm a passionate sports fan as well as a sports person. Don't get enough time to play now, but a lot of organizations I've spoken to in the sports ecosystem do not really pay attention to digitization. And you'd be surprised, I wouldn't take names, but you can see them here. And these are big organizations. Some of them, in fact, have been around for a very long time. And if you'd like to, you can just take names and go and visit their websites and look at them from a digital maturity lens. Compare them with the kind of experiences you and I interact with all the time with different startups, with different large brands, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And it's not for the lack of resources. Often enough, it's not resources. It's just the lack of awareness and the lack of understanding, because digital seems to be a daunting initiative to take. Often enough, you don't know what you need to do. But please know that there is enough help available. A lot of technology companies, a lot of companies like us will willingly give you time as well as support to be able to grow your agendas. Now let's come to generative AI. Now, what sorts of things you can do? I won't spend too much time here because I want to do the showcase. But what sorts of things you can do, you can see here on the slides. But it's been evolving at a rapid pace. I've already taken names of a few tools, but these aren't the only ones, and they're only getting better. The big question mark, though, is, will it be replacing humans? And I've been doing these sessions for over a year now, and we hear this in different rooms, in different conversations at different levels. We run conversations with CXOs, and the CXOs definitely want to adopt it, but then we also do implementation work with their teams who are a little hesitant, simply because they're unsure of how this technology will impact their work. And in my personal view, AI and I go better together. That's something I've been saying for a long time. It will definitely impact work. Will it eliminate work is a question you need to answer. In our case, we've taken the first step to adopting generative AI and taking it to nonprofits, and you already see the results. We also do a lot of consulting with startups and education for other brands, and those brands are definitely picking it up in different ways. But soon enough, it will come to a place where it is near human level efficiency. So it's not meant to scare you, it's only meant to awaken you to the fact that this technology is out there, is developing quickly, and no matter what policy, regulation, laws come in, by that time it would have achieved a certain scale and pace that would be hard to stop. Now let's look at generative AI applications. And this is what I promised you at the beginning of the slides. That what if I told you you could automate summarizing information from PDFs and videos? What if you could create content at scale for any platform you'd like? What if you could analyze data as well as create images at will? So let's look at that. Summarizing information. By the way, all the examples here are related to the nonprofit ecosystem. A lot of, in fact, the examples we've taken are for the NASSCOM Foundation. And the team was kind enough for us to be able to do this with their website and use their content. So let's summarize the India Philanthropy Report 2023. Anyone read the India Philanthropy Report? This is produced by Bain and Dasra on a yearly basis. It's a great document from a macro perspective, so if you haven't seen it, I recommend you do. But you don't have to read the 60 pages anymore. Why? Because with generative AI, you can just look at a summary. So here's a summary for you. Summarize this report for me. It's about 60 pages. Here is an exec summary from that document. Anyone tried something like this before? Show of hands. Okay. Yeah, I want to see a room which has 100% hands go up, say, all of us have tried this. If you haven't, please do. And this is a large part of our jobs, right? A lot of you sitting in this room, social entrepreneurs, people who work in the development sector, have to consume and analyze and summarize a lot of content. So this could really help. Here's another example. As a digital marketer, summarize this video for me. This video is, by the way, a TED Talk and speaks about how nonprofits should adopt a for-profit approach. It's a longish video, but here you have a summary. And notice what is different here. We've in fact used a different LLM. It's not ChatGPT. This is Bard. Why is this happening? Can anyone tell me? Because ChatGPT, the OpenAI API, cannot summarize YouTube anymore, because YouTube is proprietary data for Google. But Google, which has its own tool, is happy to give you the feature to summarize video, which is why you cannot be a one-trick pony anymore. If you have to understand generative AI, you have to look at various tools. A lot of people thought, if I understand ChatGPT, it's enough. That's not the case anymore. And these things will continue to change. Now here is a summary for that YouTube video for you. And it doesn't matter what the length or the size of the video is. You can just go to Bard. If it has a transcript and if it has timestamps, it can summarize the video for you in seconds. Saves time? Yeah? Content creation. Let's talk about LinkedIn. In this case, what we did was NASSCOM Foundation is hosting the Tech for Good India Conclave. Thanks to all of you who are here. It's going well. And the event is talking about accelerating the sustainable development agenda through technology. Now, as a communication consultant, ask me 5 questions before you start crafting the content. This is a big trick, by the way. Keep this in mind. You can ask LLMs to ask you questions. Has anyone done this before? Only 3 people. So this is one thing I want all of you to do. Go back and ask the LLM to ask you some questions. And when you answer those questions, it becomes better simply because it's including your input and your conversation into its output. So let's go ahead and see what it has asked us. So it said, hey, who are the target audience? Who are the speakers? What's the format? Registration details, unique selling points. Now, when we answer all those questions, here is the output. Announcing the Tech for Good India Conclave, and it's included all the things which we've fed it. Otherwise, it would be what you may have heard, hallucinating. Because an LLM does not know fact from fiction. It does not know right from wrong. It has to create a response because the way the technology is designed is that it will create irrespective of what you ask it. Therefore, it's your responsibility, it's your job to ensure that it's creating the right output. Now, Twitter is an LLM favorite. Why? Because it's easy to create short form content. So here is a lot of Twitter content for you based on the context and the conversation you gave it. Let's say you want to create a monthly newsletter. And newsletter is a slightly more complex piece of content, right? It's not tweet. Now, in the newsletter, what you see here are different sections which are already created for you. And now what we did was we got the output in a tabular format. So now you see the entire newsletter in one structure. And now we give a prompt saying, now that you've created this, ensure that you keep 5 sections, keep a word count of about 80 to 100 words, so that each of the sections is about roughly the same length. And each section should have a headline as well as subheading. And what you see is a newsletter delivered to you in a few minutes, actually. And I know nonprofits struggle with newsletters. The one big thing, though, I am very pleased to see, startups don't have this because startups have only recently started. Nonprofits have first-party data because they've existed for years. And it's injustice that you're not using that first-party data well, because you're producing a newsletter maybe once in 6 months or once a year, sometimes once a month. Why not once a week? Gen AI now enables you to create a newsletter every day. There are a lot of generative AI influencers who write daily newsletters, and I'm a subscriber to many of those. How are they using technology? They're very open about it. They're like, we're talking about generative AI, we're using this tool and technology, here is content for you every day. Creating blogs, important from an SEO perspective, important from a communication perspective. The same conversation which has been used for the newsletter can now be shaped into blogs. You want 1 blog, you want 5 blogs, you want 50 blogs. Scale does not matter. You want 500 blogs? Sure, take it. But can you edit? Can you fact check? Can you post 500 blogs? Is a question you need to answer. Now here's an example of a blog. So a blog for bridging the digital divide, and we got some success stories from rural India. Now let's talk about some advanced applications, and on the timer I'm only left with about 5 minutes, so I want to get through the slides and get to questions. Hopefully you have some, if not many. This is an interesting application. You can now put in an Excel file which is correctly formatted. Keep that in mind, because if it's not correctly formatted, then it'll keep giving you an error. But if you use standard Excel files, the amount of data also does not really matter. We've seen 20,000 rows, 80,000 columns. That kind of data also give very, very interesting, reasonable outputs. But you have to have the formatting done correctly. Otherwise, it keeps coming back and giving you an error. And all sorts of graphs and insight drawing possibilities now exist. Anyone tried this yet? If you haven't, then I recommend you do. Have a look at what's happening with Excel sheets. And Excel sheets is just one format in which you can provide data. There are many other formats which exist, but the Excel sheet version currently is quite robust in terms of what it creates as graphs as well as insights. You can create content from images as well. Another interesting phenomena I saw was OCR, where you use optical recognition to be able to look at what an image is saying and be able to create content from it. And it's very, very accurate. So in this case, because it's a graph, it's clearly saying what it's doing. It's able to create a social media post which accompanies this graph. And now you can use this for dissemination. Imagine doing this a year ago, even 6 months ago. It wasn't as sophisticated. Now when we see and we use and we try, all of this is very, very accurate. The final and the most fun thing. We tried very hard, but we couldn't get a more realistic image. I wish we had more time, but I don't know if you'd be okay with this image created by AI. So what we said was create a photorealistic image that conveys digital empowerment success stories from rural India. The image contains a middle-aged Indian woman with a bright smile, wearing a multicolored sari, sitting in an outdoor setting, and her background has windows, sand, and old buildings. The setting appears to be a rural village scene with a touch of modern technology. What do you say? Okay? She could look more real, for sure. But imagine creating this with a few lines of text. Of course, it took a little back and forth for us to get to the final prompt, but this is now possible. And soon enough, you will also have video where these images will be moving. It's already happening. It's just that it's not come into the mainstream yet. This is my final slide. I started Digital for Nonprofits with this thought in mind, that if you give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, I will move the world. And I think we have found that lever and that fulcrum. To us, the lever is digital, the fulcrum is generative AI. And hopefully, nonprofit by nonprofit, we will move the world. Thank you.